Good evening and welcome. I'm Hailey Coxon and this is the Spirit of Motorsport TV. Welcome. We're so glad that you've joined us once again. We really appreciate you joining in the conversation and tonight's live chat. Remember, it is an interactive show, so feel free to send over your questions, get involved in the conversation. We love to hear from every single one of you. Tag your friends, get them involved as well. And we're here for the next hour with the great Roy Moore and Barry Wood. So it's mountain memories we are talking this evening. Our topic of conversation will be shared with you very soon. But whilst you've got a moment, please do share away. Share it on your group. Share it to your friends. Get them involved, okay? Thanks so much for your messages so far. Phil Nelms, good evening to you. Happy birthday to Royster. Yes, and Mr. Roy Moore. It's his birthday today. He's very, I won't say how old he is. He's a very, very young man. Good evening, all, and a very happy birthday to Roy from Sue Russell. Gail Core is saying happy birthday to Roy. Have a good show, lads, and Hailey. Thank you, Gail. Great to see you always pop up on here and to support the show. Pete Forsyth says good evening, everyone. Happy birthday to Roy. And howdy all from America from the great John Kashersky. Great, guys. Thank you so much for saying hello. Keep it coming. Keep sharing away. So tonight's theme is favorite corners of our great TT course and viewpoints as well. So we've got some content coming up to share with you. Before we get onto that, let's invite the great Roy Moore and Barry Wood back into the studio.
Yeah, a bit embarrassing all this today. I think there's everybody is, well, you do it yourself, don't you? You see somebody that you hardly know and they've got their birthday, so you always type in something like that. But I get the feeling today that everybody is genuine about it, and it's very much appreciated. The weather wasn't very good 74 years ago when I popped out. Certainly it was snow on the ground, 2nd of February 1947. I was a war baby. I didn't know what a war baby meant, but people have explained it to me since. And it caused a bit of a family dispute, actually, which we put on this afternoon. I had two elder brothers, and they were much elder. One was 13 years older than me when I was born, and the other, I think it works out at 9 or 8 or 9. And that particular one, Brian Jr. is a good contributor to our site. His dad was so upset when he found out that I was a boy, another brother. He was expecting a girl. He thought it was a matter of fact it was going to be a girl. And he didn't speak to anybody for about 2 weeks after. I think he was that fed up with it all. But they didn't get on too well in the early days. And how many times does that happen? Two brothers who are fighting like cat and dog, and then all of a sudden there's something happens, and they're inseparable, just like my pair, really, to be fair. So thanks for all. Sincerely, thank you for all your comments. And but as they say, let's get on with the show.
Well, I suppose at least you got a birthday party after school.
Oh, yeah.
I never got that. My birthday is always in the middle of Manx Grand Prix, so I never, ever had the little badge on at school. I am 9 or something like that, you know. Yeah. So, but then again, because it's in the middle of Manx Grand Prix, it's a good excuse to go to be a 10 as well.
Yeah. Oh, see, silver lining, Barry, silver lining. You've had loads more messages here, Roy. We've got Chris Miller saying happy birthday. Grant Hollis says, evening all. Happy birthday, Roy, from Ian Anthony Huntley. Andy Cruz says, happy birthday. And Jamie Tricia Scarf say, happy cake day, Roy. Have you had your cake yet?
No, we've got to prepare, you see. I don't want to be spitting all over the screen with birthday cake with all the Smarties on the top. So we've got a bottle of, well, we've had a bit of good news. Yesterday, the second son is there's no chance at all of number one son ever producing anything. He's kind of set in his ways now, but we've got a delightful granddaughter, as everybody granddaughter is, in Violet, and it was announced yesterday, so we're not kind of stepping on anybody's toes that there's another one due in July. So my birthday today and that news yesterday, happy days.
Fantastic. Congratulations. We've got Brian Moore's joined us. Looking good again, everybody. Love from Silver Soil. Hello, Brian. Great. All right, boys. Shall we get on with it?
All right, let's get
Yeah. So we've got a few pictures to share this evening. So we're going to discuss, I know you have your own favorite viewpoints and corners. So we're going to come to those. There's so many to choose from, aren't there? But tonight we're going to have to just define it to a few. So we've got just a few pictures to share. And then I know for a fact that you guys will have some nice memories to share with it as well. So if we move on to the first picture, Aidan, that would be great.
Oh my goodness, quite good.
So I came across this and I hoped that you boys would be able to help me in filling me in a bit more on the picture because I couldn't find a lot on it.
Yeah, it's where they come out from Whitegates, which is the left-hander just a bit further back there. That was under discussion today, really, to be fair, on the site about how there was a possibility that Manx Radio might have put their commentary position back to Whitegates after Aggo Murphy had that incident where the bike hit the commentary box. But it's weird, isn't it? Because you just look at the roads and we don't know who number 2 and number 8 are heading towards us, but it's up to the right-hander, the sweeping right-hander at Stella Maris, which takes you into the view of Ramsey Hairpin. The spectators seem a bit casual, just congregated around there. There must have been a bit of a meeting on it for the Ramsey Methodists or something like that when the race was going on.
But probably 99% of those people watching that would have been Ramsey people anyway, wouldn't it? Ramsey or Mackle people.
Yeah, they wouldn't travel, like, would they?
You know, the ones predominantly who came at that time were either competitors and their teams or maybe press. They would be all Ramsey people and live nearby. And that was the same on nearly every corner on the coast. Probably if it was Ballacran, they were St John's or Foxhill people, Ballath Village, Sulby Village. They were locals from nearby. It wouldn't have been like now where you had all manner of people from all around the world watching in those days.
Haircut. Barry needs a haircut. Lovely.
Barry has been for two attempts to get a haircut today and got turned down twice. Barry's quite depressed over that. We'll get it sorted, I promise.
Still looking good, Barry. Still looking good. Right. Thank you for that, boys. A couple more comments. Remember to send your questions our way as well. If you want to contribute to conversation, please do. We love to hear from you. Got Jake. Homer says, fair play, respect. Miles Ali knew it was Whitegates to the Ramsey Hairpin. And Kaz Gross says, Barry as a young fella. Okay.
By the way, Miles, Ramsey spelled E-Y, not A-Y, but you got it right.
Brilliant. All right. So moving on to this now, Roy, I think you'll be able to fill us in on this.
Well, this is actually Whitegates, just further down the road, and that's why it came up. And we put on this as a bit of a spoof, really. Ben Birchall has been elected president of the TT Riders Association. And it involves kind of promotion, really, more than anything. He takes over from, I think, Maria Costello. And it's a bit unfortunate, really, with the lockdown, that they couldn't have carried out their duties. It would have been a case of travelling round. And then they have a big dinner in Birmingham, which is fabulous, because it's the TT Riders Association. Practically everybody is a former TT rider. And Barry would wear himself out if he went to Birmingham talking to that many people. I've been once. We went over by Air Warren, which is a private airline chartered from Ronaldsway, and we popped over. We had a fabulous time with Selwyn Griffiths, and I think it was he was the fellow that took over at the time. God, I think his name is flying round.
There's all manner of people done that job. Nick Chatham did it, I think. Nick Jeffries has done it.
Yeah, there's
Charlie Williams.
Taveri. All the top men have been president.
That's the one where they bring the bike in and fire it up, isn't it?
It is, yeah. John Kidson was the man who fired the bike up. So when Ben and probably Tom will have to keep the sidecar wheel down as he's coming into the dining room. When they fire that thing up in the middle of there, it'll be something to behold. And we if there was any possibility of us going over, we would. I'm sure somebody would travel from Germany, and I'd certainly travel from the Isle of Man to pay homage to Ben Birchall. But we said on our little kind of thing that this was them in their early days.
Brilliant. What year do you think? What year is that, boy?
It's the first one, 2024.
23, is it?
Wow.
24.
It was only 3 years, Roy, wasn't it? It was 23, 24, 25, and then it didn't come back then till 54 on the Clips course.
Yeah.
So,
no, that's good stuff.
Fantastic.
But it was hard work in those days. I mean, and nerves of steel required.
Oh,
like,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
And they were averaging like kind of 51, 52 average speed of 51, 52 mile an hour. When you think of the bikes they were on, somebody said that looks like a Douglas, the flat twin on the side, but I don't think so. But there was the stories of the sidecar TT in the early days are pretty, well kind of published, and it's wonderful stories that are coming out from it.
Well, imagine the way the road surface was on the mountain road at that time, the hammer and the passenger would have got.
Oh, unbelievable.
You'd be black and blue for a couple of weeks after, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Freddie Dixon was a winner. I forget the other ones, but that's not the object of being here saying who it is. It's because somebody out there will know, and they'll come back. And somebody actually pointed out who that was. I didn't have a clue. It could have been me and Barry, but they came back. They had the program and they checked it out, and they came back, and it was foreign sounding names, I think, for that particular photo. But it's not much changed, really, has it? I got land-based by a woman in Ramsey who rang me up when we were doing the commentary. You always say it's White Gates. It's not White Gates. It's White Gate. I said, oh, is that why they named the house just on the side there, White Gates? And then Doug Porter, who was a Ramsey resident, came back and said, in my lifetime, it's always been White Gates. There was 2 big gates and what they call a kissing gate, like a pedestrian access gate that goes through to the farm there.
Do you remember that being there? Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was we had family interest in Ramsey. We always seemed to get dragged down to Ramsey on trips out, and Uncle Jack, who was Jeff Cannell's father, was always at the controls, and he made a point of coming back over the mountain, and it just highlighted what your memory must digest, but you're not listening, type of thing. And some of the things that he said about different things, I'll always remember the veranda we were going down to when it had the yellow posts up on the mountain, which they're no longer there, the concrete posts. We went down to do rifle shooting down at Andrus Village, and we went down in Goo Owen's car, and he was a clubman's competitor. And when we came to come back, he said, we're going over the mountain. He said, looks a bit misty. You couldn't see literally your hand in front of you. And he was going along at about 30 mile an hour because with being a rider, he knew every bend that was coming up. And he said, where are we now? He said, well, we're going round the veranda, 4 right-hand bends. He said, when you see the gate on the left, you're round. And things like that have stuck in my mind for 50 years probably. Useless now because there's nothing there, but that's how they used to kind of define the course. And Barry will tell you that his braking points and peeling off points probably could go through now, every one.
Well, the thing is, with the road race, of course, you can use something for years and then you can come back the next year and it's completely different. Maybe something's been resurfaced. Maybe there's been a car accident in the winter time. A wall's been demolished or something like that. Things you've used for a long time, and I could talk at length about that. I won't start now because I'm here all night. But there was quite a few things like that. One at Doran's Bend a load of years ago, and during the winter time they didn't resurface it, but they patched it, and they put this big long rectangular patch in. And I looked at this thing one day and I thought, that's bang on line. For newcomers, it didn't matter where you peeled off as long as you went up the inside of this patch. And I looked at this, and I suggested to a few lads when we went around, and I said, let me know what you think. And it worked perfectly, and it was great for a year or two. Then it faded, it weathered in, but when it was brand new, you had this big black slayer of tarmac on the road, and it was great. And that's one of many things like that. But that's the thing about true road racing. I mean, it doesn't really happen at short circuits because it's a constant service. Whatever's there is always there. long may it continue.
Fantastic. Lots of comments here, boys. We've got some questions as well. Brian Moore asked what your favourite section was, Barry, but we're going to come back to that, if that's all right. And then, Roy, you got a similar question, but where you like to watch, from John Kosierski. What would be your spot just to watch?
It's a bit. You've got to kind of drag yourself back again into the times when you didn't have cars, you didn't have motorbikes, you only had a push bike. So my kind of watching areas were all centered around where we lived. And I didn't know it at the time, but when I was about 10 or 11, I was living with aunties. I lived with Jeff Cannell and their family, and I didn't know why. We know now that it was a bit of a family breakup, and I'd been farmed out because my two elder brothers just left me. They just disappeared, and I didn't know why. I knew nothing about national service. And with them being much older than me, they had to go and do their stint of 2 years, and they went to Germany. And it was all right when they came back, because they'd always bring us back a nice big Schuko car or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I had an auntie who lived in Sunnyside, Victoria Road, and then the Cannell family were always up in Onken. So it was perfect for that, the Clips course especially, because they were going round Onken, through Onken village. So my kind of centred places were always around Governor's Bridge. But I was a very nervous watcher. I didn't like to see anybody come off. So I felt as though if I went to the Hillberries, which were reasonably accessible through Little Mill, that I wouldn't like it. But there was something happened, and I made a date. At the date it was, we were watching at Governor's Bridge on the Thursday afternoon practice, and I was up by the barrier as what normal. If somebody fell off at Governor's Bridge, they weren't going to damage themselves. But out of the dip came number 100 in the practice, and it was a fellow called Jeff Griffin. And it's well reported, but what happened was he was doing a plug shop. And again, it's a term you use, like megaphonitis and on the pipe, that they didn't have technology to plug in at the end of it. And he had to give it full stick on his G45 matchless, so that when the mechanic took the plug out, he'd have a look at it and say, yeah, it's running okay. Nut brown seemed to be the order of the day. And he lost concentration. And at the bottom of 3rd Avenue, he hit the tree. And he was still conscious and alive when he left the scene, as it were. But I've got a vivid memory of him getting taken to a waiting ambulance in Victoria Road. And he went, and then the news was released after. So that made it even more kind of a thing. Of course, when we left Onken and got back as a family again, when my brothers returned, the next venue was Spring Valley, down by an obvious place to go was the Quarter Bridge. And again, that suited me down to the ground because, yeah, there was a few spectacular incidents there. One sidecar in particular came down one night and burst into flames and finished up on the roundabout. And that's been well reported. But it was an area where I didn't usually watch too much on the corners. I'd take myself off under the bridge and go out to Braddon Bridge on the approach. Mm-hmm. And there were incidents that happened, but I was very nervous. So when it comes down to saying your favourite spot, we didn't get much opportunity to go anywhere else. So Governor's Bridge, Quarter Bridge. But Barry, being the wealthy people they were, they could travel. And he's got some good stories, I'm sure, of where he was.
Just saying there, Roy, about how you were a nervous spectator. I was too as a young child, because the bikes were a lot louder as well in them days.
Yeah.
And I think there was, I think the approaching noise was a lot more nerve-wracking for a child than it is today. Mm. And you had smells, you had these other noises like the squeal of brakes with the sidecars, burning rubber, stuff like that. That doesn't really happen anymore. And I wouldn't say it's less scary, but it's not quite as
dramatic.
Yeah, I think so. Like I have said many, many times, Bedstead Corner was where I always watched from a young boy. And the reason for that partly was because we had no transport. My mum and dad never did drive. So it was literally up from where I still live now, straight up the road. There was a hedge right across the road into the fields. And you went up the first field, which is on the skyline, then the second field, and then up a lane. And that lane brought you out to Bedstead Corner. So you could walk it in about 15 minutes, which was handy in later years when I was sent up there at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning to save places. And then once everybody else arrived, I'd go home then, have a cup of tea and a bit of toast, and then go back up. But you had to do that because you had trip boats coming overnight, getting alongside Douglas at 4 a.m. A lot of these people, maybe if it was their first time, they were on foot. They had to be back down for that night to get the boat back home at 8 o'clock that night. So you didn't particularly want to go too far. So although lots did go out on a sharrow, a coach rather, but you would get to the likes of Bedstead and walk along the promenade up Broadway, look at the grandstand, and then carry on up around the course, and you get to Bedstead. Oh, this looks all right, you know. We'll watch here. Well, I wasn't having that. I wanted. I had one place I like to watch at, and I posted a photograph last week of Bob McIntyre there. The third black curb marker up the road. If you sat right opposite that, you had the best view of Signpost and the best view of the Nuke as well. And I always watch at that spot. And there's many a time I've come up the lane, maybe 5 a.m., sat on the hedge, and there's maybe 20 people walking up from the Nuke. And I'm thinking, that was a close one. And then they go, what's this corner called? Well, this is Bedstead, and that's Signpost Corner. That's where the light comes on when the riders, you know, get there before the pit stop. And that's the Nuke and Governor's Bridge. Well, this will do us. And then they'd all just spread the coats out on the hedge and fall asleep. So by 6 o'clock, you wouldn't get a look in. So it was handy that we were near home. But the other reason I liked it as well is because it was near the end of the lap. So if you're watching a race, like I always still do, take the numbers in retirements and stuff like that. So by the time the leader went past you, it was a 99% chance that was going to be the result. He was unlikely to go missing. And I always remember 1976, we got taken out to Glen Helen to watch that day by Percy Guest, a great character, a story I wrote one all the time. Percy took us out, and I remember it was the race where we waved John Williams past on the last lap on the Works Heron Suzuki, and I thought, brilliant, I really like John Williams, you know, and then you heard him through Balaf, and you heard him through the bungalow, but he had to push in, and he finished seventh. And I couldn't get my head around this, because I was used to waving the leader past at Bedstead, and that was it. He crossed the line in 30 seconds later. So it was quite a strange one to be in a different place on the course, and the leader didn't actually win the race. So, but Bedstead for me until the early 90s when the developments started and the whole thing at the corner changed, you know, that the hedge was knocked away and a whole new road was brought in there, Haywood Avenue, and it's different. And I haven't been back there since. Nowadays, Cablegate is a place for me, but it's a bit awkward to get to at the TT.
Nice mission to go on there when you get there, isn't it? And when you're there, you're there. So we've got a few comments, guys. We've got Stephen Hallam says, massive TT fan. My next TT will be my 50th. Gutted on the last 2 cancellations. Tell Roy his voice is more famous than the Queen's. He is the TT, and happy birthday from Stephen Sheffield. Thanks, Steve. John O'Sullivan says, happy birthday, Oyster. Please mention Clark's Corner, Ian Anthony Huntley. Thank you, Ian. John Kashirski, Brian Morris, spot on. Would be which pub had the best parking? Would it be which pub had the best parking? Yeah, okay.
R.O. Clark, 1920, lightweight TT. Gate was Clark's Corner. So.
Brilliant. I did not know that. Great, thank you. Brian Moore says, did Barry ever have a favourite corner section as a rider? We've just touched on that, and we'll come back to it as well with the pictures. Kaz Gross as well says, my mum and dad bought me all the way from Port Erin every single senior race day. My brothers and I from Ramsey. we're not all from Ramsey. So we're not all from Ramsey. Great, Kaz. Thank you. Andy Carouche says Cloudy Lane, just after Encullen Jump. Barry will know where it is, where my favourite spot when I lived in Kirkmichael. Not allowed to stand there now. Him at Hilbury, behind the wall, on the my favourite now. Yes, Andy. Brilliant. Keep it coming, guys. Keep sending us your favourite. Where's your favourite spot, your favourite viewpoint? And we have Miles Lally as well is saying, hard question. What is the actual length of the course now? What, with all the corner improvements and changes, etc., over the years, we've always factored for the 37 3/4 miles, but so many corners have realigned over the years. So, lads, any guesses as to what the actual length is now? Good question, Miles.
It's a good question, and it's been one that's been brought up before, going back many, many years ago. Got straight away, like Braddon has been altered, Snugborough has been altered. Where else? Quarry Bends, Windy Corner, Brandish. But it came up before. I don't think personally that anybody would take this on to do an accurate measurement, because they'd have to then backtrack and change all the things.
You're going to ruin all the records.
You'd ruin the records.
You know, and different speed tables and things like that. So although we know deep down it's not exactly that.
It's
maybe best to
shorter,
Sleeping Dogs Live.
Yeah, shorter. A fella called Charlie Rouse, and him and a fella called Dougie Baird, which is a name well known to the Isle of Man. Again, it seems strange because you can't go walk across the road now without danger of getting run over. But they took it on an early morning to get one of these wheels, like a bike wheel that goes behind a car, and to do it in the centre of the road. And Dougie was the driver, taking it fairly steady, but there was not danger of much traffic coming the other way. And they came up with some magic number and all, which showed that the course was either, nobody was really bothered, was either shorter or longer. But as Barry quite rightly says, you'd have to rewrite everything. And it's 37 3/4. It has been from day one. And to be fair, I know it might not be the answer you're looking for, because probably on Google Earth you could get an exact measurement of it. But I think for the history of the event, Barry, it's 37 3/4, and that's it.
37.73. What was the magical figure, wasn't it? But
yeah,
I think we should be relieved that we still have it, and the TT course hasn't had to go down the route of chicanes and things like that, where lots of the Irish road races maybe have. I would be quite happy for, as long as road racing continues, that the mountain course stays exactly as it is, with exactly the same place names as well. Personally, I don't want to see any place names changed. If they've been called something for over a century, that's how it should stay, even if it's 11th milestone or 26th milestone or whatever. Those names are etched in TT folklore, as far as I'm concerned.
Agreed. We've had, just before we move on to the next picture, we've got Chris Miller saying Gorsley, or the bottom of Barragaro. I can't speak. Gorsley is one of my favourites, definitely.
Yeah, I would never watch.
Yeah.
I don't know what's there. I know Sean Hogg goes there. I've never watched that. I would be petrified.
Yeah. Great, boys. So we've got some more pictures coming up. This next one, Mr. McCallum.
Phil McCallum.
On big time, and you can be sure there's no slack in the throttle wire at that point. Absolutely flat on the mat. I can't actually give you a year on that. It was at that period where, without looking at excuses, I was competing myself, and it's all a bit of a blur looking back. What would we say? 93-ish, 94. 94.
Yeah, when he went Grand Prix thing, and then after when he got up number 11, looks very well. Yeah, 90.
He was a motor
95.
Right about then.
Yeah.
And where is it? Is that?
It's the Balacry jump. It is. So just in the background, there's a very, very fast left-hand kink. You can just see that. And as you come around that left-hand kink, you're confronted with this big jump. And it's very, very fast, you know, and certainly it could take a long time to have the courage to maybe not roll off there. And certainly on a super bike, it's a big issue. But you've got to keep everything straight as well, obviously, you know. You've got to just grip with your knees and elbows. But I mean, even if it was a Governor's Bridge, Philip would still look dynamic, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
He always did look fast wherever he was.
Yeah, it's an unusual shot because the majority of Balacry are taken from the other side of the road. And yeah, you could catch a few out with that. They say, well, that house isn't there, but that's actually Balacry Farm. And it's a bit of a dodgy spot in normal day traffic. You can just imagine like the farmer trying to get out of that little tight opening there. And there's been quite a few nasty incidents in and around that area.
Well, they put one of these fan zone grandstand things in there for a few years.
That's right, yeah. Just on the
bend
itself.
Yeah, I don't know if that's still there or not now. But I love the shadow there, and you can prove that he's in the air because the shadow to the actual bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think as well now you can see some people watching in the background. I think for obvious reasons that they've had to clamp down now on where spectators watch on that section. You know, there were one or two incidents up there, and I think it's not quite as easy to watch there as it was at one time.
Gary Carswell made that. Remember Gary with affection, sadly no longer with us. He used to like to stand it on the back wheel, and there was one classic, John, the fella's name I can't pronounce, and Kashersky will probably have seen that through it, where Gary was absolutely like, if it would been a road bike, he'd have been on the number plate going, and then he got it back just, and then was shaking his hand like this. He went off down to all the people that were probably with their eyes shut at the time. But, Gary Carswell is a classic over there.
Gary actually did fall off there in later years, you know.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh my word.
Yeah, and there was another lad who was racing when I was, called Warren Turner from New Zealand, and I think he tipped off. You know, it's a great spot, but it needs to be respected as well.
Not a place I'd go to, unfortunately, and Ghost Lake in the same. So yeah, still Ramsey Hairpin is quick enough for me.
I prefer medium fast to very fast. Honestly, in these ones that say, "Oh, we're out the Black Dove or Rancolin," I said a while ago how I went to Rancolin for morning practice on my crutches one year when I was hurt, and I stood on the hedge and I watched them all go through on the first lap, and I called. There was a police constable on duty, and I said, "Hey, boy, come here." He says, "What's wrong?" I said, "Just get me the hell out of here." And he helped me down on the parapet to walk me back to my van, and I went around to Ballath to watch the second lap because I was injured, and if anybody would have got out of shape, and to me every single bike was out of shape, I couldn't jump for me, you know, to safety. No, so I'd waited all I need to go and watch it Rancolin, and it was the first and last time I ever watched it Rancolin, quite frankly. Too scared.
We've got Kaz Gross saying Robert Dunlop's back wheel shattered just before Balacry jump. We've got Andy Griffiths-Barney saying Neil Lloyd's scariest corners got to be Barry through the 11th milestone. Stephen Oates says they got rid of the stand as nobody went on it. Oh, that's interesting. I thought people were using that. Grant Hollis says bottom of Barragaro was my favourite before it was restricted. Amazing place for viewing, and the farm lady fed and watered you from out the back of her horse box. The field was a great place for a snooze or a game of cards between races. There was always a bit bottom nipping waiting turn into the field to park up, and everybody howling down from the top of Barragaro. Had some great crack in that field, yeah.
You used to be able to watch behind the fence, or even years ago sit on the hedge and watch up the road as the bikes come down directly towards you. I was there one time, and obviously you heard of Rob McElnay, who was a TC winner, went on to do GPs, and he was doing the Manx on a TZ7, and he got out of shape and come sliding towards me, and That was enough. That's another place I don't think you can go there now, can you? I don't think
probably not.
Going
Phil
back,
Nelm says, can Barry remember where his mum first took him in his pram?
funnily enough, that's a nice lead-in to
yes.
something which I was told. We've already mentioned tonight, Tom and Ben Birchall, but their dad, who was involved in the BSA Gold Star Owners Club, their father was a marshal at the bottom of Bagarrow. And he was telling me in conversation that when they were kind of babes in arms, probably Ben, I think, is the older one, and then Tom came along later. But Ben Birchall was taken and parked in the field at the bottom of Bagarrow all those years ago, where the last thing on his mind would be competing, while his father did the marshalling. Now, that's what the whole thing is about.
God, what year would that be?
That would be, I don't know,
early
what age.
80s.
Yeah,
I don't know how old them lads are now, but they would probably be in the 80s, I would say.
Yeah, early 80s, I'd say, mid 80s.
Little thing that was told to me when I was in conversation with him. We were going to do a talk at St. John's, and we were kind of putting it together, and he was telling us about that situation there. So, yeah, that's something else you didn't know until tonight.
Absolutely. Fantastic. John Krzyzewski says, I can't picture where that is. Gorsley, we'll bring it into another show. You'll be able to see it on lots of your playbacks and your downloads that you've been watching, John. Check it out. So we've got a few more pictures coming up. Thanks everybody for your messages and your questions. Barry, what was your scariest corner when you were riding? That's a question from Samantha Lloyd. Thank you, Sam.
Scariest corners, I tended not to like the very slow ones, I think. And I think it was Nick Jeffries actually said, as you come up out of, you've been going so fast for so long coming into Ramsey, and then you have these little traps, the likes of Ramsey Hairpin or the likes of the Gooseneck or Waterworks. I think they catch you out, and I didn't particularly like that. You know, somebody said it was like going from being in a rave, bouncing around, going and listening to Leonard Cohen next door. Your head was going from one speed to the next speed. There's no one I didn't particularly like. I know I had a couple of big accidents, but I was quite happy with those places. It was just that they didn't work out on that particular day for a certain reason. But there was nowhere I would say. Probably the bottom of Bagarrow was always a relief to get done, I would say, especially in a 6-lap race. You know, you can only go as quick as you felt brave enough to do so. And I always felt on the last lap, I'm quite pleased that's done with. I wouldn't say I disliked it, but I maybe respected it slightly more than most.
All righty. So the next picture, boys. Aidan, thank you so much.
There you go now.
Did you put that?
No, it's there's a story behind this as well. Again, in family circles in 1959, you had to go where the work was, and there was a bar, the snack bar on Peel Promenade, and my mother was going down there to do work during the day, and I had to go with her for obvious reasons. 1959, off school, and a fella pulled up outside on that BMW. It wasn't, no, it was a Triumph. It was that he was doing during the race, and he had this American style helmet, and all the women in Peel went orgasmic over seeing this American in Peel, like, and they couldn't wait to get their hands on him. And it was a fella called Ed LaBelle, and he'd come over to realize his ambition to ride in the TT on a BMW, and it was the year they first introduced Formula 1 and Formula 2 races, which were supposed to be for out-and-out production stuff. Bob McIntyre and Alistair King cleared up in winning. I think Bob Mac won the senior and Alistair King won the junior. But Eddie LaBelle, when you were talking about before, isn't it? It's amazing how things become coincidence. I got carried in. An American in those days was like somebody from another planet. Oh yeah, he's American. He's an American rider, and he talked and he wooed the women down there and stuff. And he probably got back later on, but he was over here to race. And I've just read a story somewhere where somebody was giving him advice about getting around, but he seemed to fall off a lot. And he competed in 59 in the Formula One, but in practice, he actually fell off on the approach to Governor's Bridge on the BMW. And I can picture him as clear as a whistle if I shut my eyes now, getting carried down on a stretcher. He wasn't badly hurt because he competed later on in the week, but he'd fallen off in practice. And all he was saying was that he'd had a premonition that this was going to happen, that he was going to fall off. But it wasn't the first time. He seemed to fall off at regular intervals. But the thing about it was, that was the very, very wet senior of 59. And there was only 22 riders completed the distance. And you'll see in the results that Eddie LaBelle was one of them. And I think he, on the BMW, which would be a brute of a thing to handle in the conditions that prevailed on that day, because I know full well, because we were sat out in it. But Eddie LaBelle from America, the first kind of American-style crash hat I'd ever seen. The other ones were all Cullen-based, and I think Mike Duff probably be the next in line for that.
Good one, good call, right?
Yeah.
Jeremy Gill says, Barry, how would you feel about taking one of the commentary positions on the course? Ooh.
If you've got any aspirations, Mr. Lucas,
not. It's things are different now. I think to what they used to be. I think there may be a lot more pressure to bear. Now, this is only my own assumption. I never discussed this before. But there may be more pressure to bear now on a new commentator than maybe what there was in the past, as regards maybe what to say or do, or what to wear and stuff like that. What not to wear. I would find it an interesting challenge, but I don't really know if I could toe the line with restrictions. I don't really like told what to do, quite frankly. TT has changed a lot. I would be very interested at the Manx, but it's not just the Manx now, it's the classic TT as well. It would be interesting, but I really don't know. I think if that question would have cropped up maybe 20 years ago, it would have been an interesting challenge. But now if I had the chance to commentate at the Southern 100, I would be very interested in doing that. I fancy that. But yeah, it's a very deep question, and it's maybe one I can't answer in full with the whole world watching, if you know what I mean. You're up the book, we'll talk about that one.
Great, boys. Thank you. We've got Carlos saying, what's that on your head, Barry? A new bobble hat?
What was that purpley triangle thing you had on yours?
So we've got a couple more pictures, and then we've got one more guest that we're going to invite into the studio to join you boys as well. Lots of great comments. Thanks, everybody. Keep this coming in. More birthday wishes for Royster. Happy birthday from Jock Bell. Not in the pub, ?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe out terrorising somebody at the moment, is he? Or is he still living in Ballaugh? Same thing.
And we've got Gavin Bell saying, I'd like to say a big thank you to Roy for reporting back to my pit crew about a broken exhaust in the Manx Grand Prix in 2005.
Well, isn't this funny how this works out? Because for the last 2 years, the Manx radio broadcast has been covered by the government. And before, you would never say to Jeff Cannell, you'd never say to Peter Neal, you'd never say to Ian Cannell, you would never say to Fred Clark, probably the least person you would say that to, as to this is what you've got to say and do. But when the government controlled it, there was a couple of decisions they made, which I thought were disgraceful, really. They took away the ability of Manx Radio to photograph anything on the Glencrutchery Road and post it so that people could get the atmosphere here, there and everywhere. And prior to going on air, the old text machine went on, the old email, and then we had a full list of what you can and can't do, say and not say on the radio. And I looked at it and then, yeah, well, you know what I would think will be thinking about it, because I can say these things now, because it's highly unlikely, to be fair, that I will be involved anymore. But at the same time, that's in abeyance at the moment. But it was stupid, really, because you were getting told to say and do things. And one of the things that you were said, do not comment on anything mechanical at any time during your time on air. You might be. So when Maria Costello went through, obviously stuck in third gear, which you could work out from the way she was going up towards the waterworks, and if I've picked out that Gavin Bell might have had a problem with his exhaust, I would mention that. I've actually been there when there was fluid coming out of the belly pan of a bike going through, mentioned that on air, and then the black flag came out later on and he got stopped. He might not have been too happy with me at that particular moment in time, but then when he would sit back and think, if I didn't have any cooling fluid in the bike, it might have seized on the mountain mile, and the result could have been different. So all these things have been really done. Misfires. You know full well that when somebody at the lowest revs you can get at it go round Ramsey hairpin, there's going to be a big handful of throttle given on the climb up to the waterworks. And you can hear, even though you've got your headphones on, misfires, which you can report. Sounds as though it's misfiring going away from the hairpin. And that's the difference between winning and losing. And you're a free agent, or you were a free agent until 2 years ago. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that, maybe, I don't know. It's a difficult one, but it's not for me, I'm afraid.
It's different.
We've just got a couple more pictures, boys. We'll share one that might be quite familiar to Mr. Roymore.
Yeah, that lump of ground and grass there has not changed, has it? It's been altered a bit, but it's not changed. I mean, I often think when I'm sitting here that they might have been based in Ramsey and saying, this going round by Laxey to get to Douglas is a waste of time. There's been a few sheep going over the mountain, and they've got a nice little track from the Gooseneck through to Craignabar. We could put a road on that. And then they would start doing the road, and they'd come to the Ramsey hairpin, and they say, bloody hell, where do we go next? So, well, there's only one way we can do, is to follow the mountain. Yeah. And that's a quote used by Guy Martin when he came to the TT. He said, how did you learn the TT mountain course, Guy? He said, I just followed the mountain. And the road builders would follow the mountain, and they'd get up to the Gooseneck, and they'd be cut and fill, I think is the correct term for it. Cut from the mountain, fill the bottom side, and then up over probably from about just out from the Gooseneck, all the way through would be just a track that would be created by the sheep, and they would just tidy it up. But when they created Ramsey hairpin, they put a big lump of muck and soil and stuff there, and it's still there to this day. And the history of it is unbelievable, and you can feel the atmosphere of the venue. The fellow with the white coat and sidecars going sideways and fellas upside down, and of course, in the film No Limit in 1935, it was a part that was pretty graphic. Really, they would never get away with it now, where a bike went up the bank on the right-hand side and came tumbling down and burst into flames. And that was at Ramsey hairpin. So, yeah, looking back down to Ramsey, that's changed a bit. Yeah, the old housing estate on the left, and houses everywhere now.
One or two old places you can see on them pictures, like the old Eskdale Hotel. That was there a long time before the houses. I don't know if it's on that there or not. But it was
a Grand Island if we were really struggling.
Probably.
And we've got a couple of comments about the McCallum picture. We've got Nigel Kinraid saying it was Balacry 97 Formula 1 TT, and he rode the number 1 for the senior that year as well. Brilliant. Thank you, Nigel. Great. So moving up from Ramsey Hairpin then, Barry, your favourite corner, you said, so moving in towards the bungalow. We've got a couple of pictures of that heading up onto the mountain.
Well, the favourite corner I meant was the right-hander going into the bungalow after the Grey Memorial.
Yeah, I couldn't get a picture of it. It was really annoying.
You
I could not get a picture, no. There wasn't any.
Inaccessible.
Yeah.
But what happened there was when I was a newcomer, and not just me, everybody else, whoever was, when they were newcomers, you were always advised if a faster rider passed you to watch what they were doing. You see, this is how you learned. And I can always remember in my newcomers year, I was passed by a rider called Mick Robinson. Now, Mick has just joined our group in the last week or so, a great two-stroke rider and a classic rider, and probably one of the finest riders never to win the Manx. He was, I don't know how many rostrum places Mick had, and he had many, many replicas as well. But Mick passed me, and I remember watching him. And on that bend, the road lines were different in those days. And there were short lines, and then it became long lines. And whether Mick did it on purpose or not, but I watched everything he did. And he was center of the road till he got to the long lines, and he went zip, straight across to the right-hand side, and he disappeared. I thought, oh my God. And I tried that the following lap, and I did it every time. And eventually it became one of my favorite places on the course. Now, there's another story to do with that, because years later, they changed, they resurfaced everything and changed all the white lines. But there's another thing. If you look on the extreme left-hand side of the road, you've got like a marshal's sentry box kind of a thing and a marker. But in between the two, there's a fantastic Manx Grand Prix line there, which is a club header, which at the Manx is bright pinky purple, and it's very, very vivid. So basically, if you go head right out to this bit of pink heather and directly back across like what Mick did, you can do that all very, very quickly indeed, right? And I've shown newcomers the line. I haven't said don't try and do it flat out, but get the line right and it will work. And so many people come back and say to me, that actually works. Now, there was one year in particular, I had a phone call shortly before even practice by a friend of mine, Peter Creer, who's a Manx Grand Prix regular. And Peter said, have you been up the mountain today, Barry? I said, I haven't yet, no. He said, well, you better go and have a look, because the highway board, in their wisdom, had gone up and cut all the verges. And they cut all this bright pink heather bush, heather, away completely, right? So then I had to run around the paddock like a mad thing, trying to find all these newcomers to tell them not to go looking for that, because I didn't want my responsibility if somebody ended up going over the side of the mountain looking for this thing which wasn't there anymore. But this gets back to what I say about road racing. It could literally change by the day. It was like the other year, wasn't there, an accident up by the Black Hut, and they had to shut the road overnight. You remember that, Roy? Yeah. And it was a massive big black square covering the whole road, which hadn't been there the previous day. That is my favourite corner, and I have to thank Mick Robinson for that.
Brilliant. And then we've got Keppelgate as well. So you did mention Keppelgate before. So we've got a little picture there heading down, then moving in towards the Cregna Bar. We've got some pictures too. Look at that's a beautiful day for a photo, isn't it?
We can both talk about this, Roy and me, and I'm sure Sean can as well. When Bedstead ceased for me, I started to go to Keppelgate because it's a fantastic view. You're all stuck in there for the day, but as long as you've got plenty of butties and crisps and all the rest of it. Now, Bob Cooley, Black Bob, the sidecar man, used to sell stuff up there. Yeah, he had a Black Bob Cooley, the only or the first Manx sidecar racer to win a world championship point. Yeah. He used to sell burgers and hot dogs and stuff, but he hasn't been there for some years. But I'll let you get in there. Quite happy with it. Great view. The only thing now, if you go up at the Manx, I can drive up there in 5 minutes. If it's at the TT, because of the one-way system, it's 30 miles around Ingerbreck. So it takes a bit more time. And the Ingerbreck road can be a bit nerve-wracking early in the morning in case some of our European friends come to you on the wrong side of the road. I love it up there. It has changed dramatically over the years. There used to be just on the right side, as you can see there, years ago, there was a gate went in there, and you will see photographs of bikes and sidecars and even cars and vans parked on the mountainside. Now that wouldn't happen now. You couldn't do it now. The gate is not there anymore. Plus, of course, you used to be able to watch between the right and the left-hand bends right on the roadside, but there was an accident there in the Manx Grand Prix 1996 where unfortunately a rider crashed and caught his arm in the pig wire fence.
Olaf Jones,
yeah. And the following year they had moved the fence down below the road. So if you go there now, obviously it's a lot safer, but you can hear the bikes, but you can't see them. But you've been up there, Roy, many a time.
Yeah, it's been a good spot, really, because you can just go up and drive in and park the car and away you go. The helicopter's stationed at Keppelgate as well. And that's always an interesting observation. You're not too happy when it fires up to go somewhere. But it's just kind of, and that view, when you just walk down a little bit further at Keppelgate, you can view out over Douglas. And we often say if you're leading a TT or a Manx Grand Prix and you go through Keppelgate and you get to there and just quick glance to the right-hand side out through Abbeylands all the way through to Douglas, and you can see where you're heading for in front of you to the Craig, and you can see where you want to be sweeping round Cronknamona and ready to do the big celebration job.
Well, it was always there as well as you come down to Windy Corner and as you come around Keppelgate, Kate's Cottage, in early morning practice, you would see the sunrise and the big stripe of light across the bay. I mean, it's very hard to explain how magical that was, you know. But a lot of good times.
I bet in 2018 on that gorgeous TT fortnight that we had, I bet it was stunning up there. Would have been quite a special place to watch it.
Yes, I was up there every day actually, and I remember getting both my ankles sunburned. I took a photo, and for weeks after they were this strange colour. But that was the first time for you who could do that, and that's on the mountain section as well. What do you like?
Brilliant. We've had some great comments here. Andre Jerkop says, Keppelgate, don't forget the anti-midgie spray. Thanks for the tip, Andre. And we've got another guest to come into the studio. So the lovely Mr. Sean Hogg, who supports you and is an admin on your Mountain Memories page on Facebook, would like to wish Roy a happy birthday and join us in the convo. Good evening, Sean.
Good evening, everybody.
Sean.
Good evening, Sean.
Happy birthday again, Roy.
Thank you, Sean. Much appreciated.
And I can beat you, Barry. My birthday's in TT week, so I'm in the Premier class, and I've never had to buy cakes for anybody or anything like that either, because I've always been off school.
Exactly. But you're 3 months older than me too, which is a good thing.
Or off work. Yeah,
so, Sean, where's your favourite viewpoint or corner on the track?
Favourite. And Roy had both said when I was younger, it was footwork to get to. Father was up with her, and my mother we ran the boarding house. So our nearest location when we were growing up was Waterford. And similar to what Roy was saying earlier on, you run down there under the bridge, into the river, whatever, over it, and you can watch either side of the wall, wherever you wanted to watch. Yeah, but it was great when we were young. And I mean, some memorable occasions down there. I say, obviously, we ended up in the river quite regularly, crossing over or whatever. But I can remember watching down there one day with, I think it was the White Helmets come round. They were doing the pyramid thingy. And the guy on the top fell over the wall into what is now the access road. He actually fell off the top of the pyramid at the bridge. And I think because it was a railway line then, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the main Peel line.
Yeah. And he fell over there and broke his arm or his leg or something. But it was quite.
It sounds horrendous to me.
Yeah, so say going up, it was Quarterbridge, and then obviously we then moved down onto the promenade and had the hotel. So get out and about. When I was 16, I used to go out. But talking about Balacry, you mentioned Balacry there with Philip McCallan. I actually went to Balacry in 1978. I was taken there by a rider, a Manx Grand Prix rider, Kevin Jackson. Barry knows Kevin. He was also.
Oh, your audio keeps going, Sean.
He's three.
Oh, you're back. You're back.
And the marshal. Nobody really knew about it. And I can remember it because you look at the lines, and all the boys will tell you when they come around that corner, they all go down the right side. He was a very famous Irish rider. He'd come down the left side. He was the only one ever come down the left, and he'd be past you like that. But say Balacry, well, in that period, and then Balacry changed. It became less accessible. They got crowded, whatever. So then I would say Hilbury's always been a favourite.
Yeah.
Excellent place to watch. It's easy to get. I've always got to go to places where I can look after my dad as well, because he likes his sandwiches and his coffee and stuff like that. So he can't go edge climbing or anything like that. So Hilbury, Bishop is also very spectacular, but not easily accessed.
Yeah.
Well worth it. And of course, Gorsley being mentioned, I've been to Gorsley numerous occasions.
I love Gorsley. Now, Sean, we've had a few messages for you here. We've had a evening, Sean. Hi, Sean. We've got evening from Pete Forsyth. David Williams says hello, Sean. Carla,
hi, David.
Yes. Seamus says good evening, Sean. Now we've got a surprise video that we're just going to share for Mr. Roystermore. I believe that there's a little video that needs to be shared. Lovely, Aidan.
Yeah, mate. Cut.
Happy birthday!
Very good. Yeah, it's been a bit of a traumatic time with everything that's been happening, and it was a bit sad with Jeff Cannell's wife. We couldn't get involved in that in any way, not even get into the chapel to say goodbye to Linda, and then the news about Kevin, which kind of cheered everybody up tremendously, and everything. If you look in the background of there, when you're talking about Keppel Gate, John Caldwell got that photograph of Peter, and it's after you come round Keppel Gate, and the really quick boys are on the back wheel there, going over the little rise in the road, which takes you down into Kate's cottage. So when we've been talking, everything seems to have fallen into place tonight. And I hopefully think, and I'm pretty confident it is, new ground, because you're always conscious when you do things like this that you're going to repeat yourself. The boys will keep telling you when you start telling you a story that you've already told them and stuff like that. They're quick to kind of shut you up and say, "Oh, we know that you told us that last week." But I think tonight, with the things that have been discussed, and especially getting it from Barry from a rider's point of view, and then Sean getting involved, who's kind of the mastermind behind the whole site when we first thought about it. It's been a memorable birthday.
But you know, Roy, regarding Keppelgate, one of the most stupidest things I ever did trying to be clever, I thought I'll do something completely different tonight. I will walk up there, and I walked out to Abbey Lance Chapel, if you know it.
Ooh.
And the track goes right up there to a mountain called Shlewree, over the stile, and then you had to climb right over this mountain and down to Keppelgate. And it took me about an hour and a half, and I was knackered, and there was about 100,000 spiders, cobwebs in the heather. I'm petrified of spiders, right? And I was like Michael Jackson. I remember when I came over the top of the mountain, all these marchers went. And I come down, and this fella said to me, "Where have you walked from?" I said, "Abbey Lance Chapel." He said, "Respect." But I had to walk back home the same way, and I thought I was never getting there. That's the night Ryan Farquhar came off at Keppelgate right in front of me, and they had the helicopter there, and not nice to see. Luckily, Ryan got out. He was in hospital all week. He got out at the end of the week, but he was sore. But it brings it all back when you see the close quarters, you know. We all look forward to getting back to Keppelgate ASAP, of course.
Liz Neville says, "Happy birthday, Roy, from the two of us in Norfolk." And David Clack says, "Happy birthday, Royster."
Actually, is it?
Yeah.
And Seamus Rice has still got the video of yourself at Keppelgate, I think on the 250.
I fell off at Keppelgate on the 250, and it's on video, and I'm itching to get it on Facebook, but I'm not technical enough to know how to do that. So give me 5 years, and you might.
Or a glamorous assistant right there. There you go.
He'd be fixing the microphone.
Mr. Hogg. Yeah. Right, boys. Thank you so much. Sean, thanks again for joining us. We look forward to you coming on a little bit more. We'll just get your microphone sorted for you there. We'll get onto that. Roy, happy birthday to you. Have a lovely evening. Your cake is waiting. Hope you're getting a pint or two in as well, maybe.
I'll hang around, man.
Yeah, it's just a delight to be involved in it. I mean, the way it's dropped onto a birthday, it's quite overwhelming, really, to be fair. And it's just the way it is, isn't it? Hope we've entertained you as we always try to do. There's still plenty on the old site. We're up to about 3,500 people now, and there was some nice comments on there today as well, and it's very much appreciated.
Barry, thank you once again. I look forward to seeing you with a new hairdo again next week.
Very well. You won't recognize me next time.
I know. You're like, "Ooh,
I'm a screaming point with it, honest to God."
Get some
still
clips.
looking good, Barry.
No, very enjoyable. Always good to have you up.
Definitely.
Also nice to be back down here instead of what I had to lock down, sorting it out myself. Where, like you see, no social distancing here, thank the good Lord. So thanks for the opportunity. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's our absolute pleasure. So, boys, 2 weeks' time, we'll be back again.
If you say so, we'll be here.
Fantastic. Thank you, boys. Have a nice evening. And thank you to every single one of you for your comments. We've got Linny Ritzy says, fantastic show. Chris Moffat says, cracking. Thanks, everybody. Pete Forsyth says, thank you all. Loved it as usual. Roll on for the next one. Brilliant. Everybody, thank you. Don't forget, this is available on replay. So if you came in late or you know somebody else that might enjoy it, please share away. The more you share it, the more it will grow and the more content that we can produce for you. So thank you for your support. We wish you a wonderful evening. And once again, to the Mr. Roy Moore, a very happy birthday to you.
I think it's my birthday, Mrs.